Hello and welcome to City Beat. We are your central source of news and information for the city of Rocky Mount. I'm Public Affairs Manager Tamika Keenan Norman, and you know, this moment is bittersweet because we've got Vanessa McCleary, our Downtown Development Manager, who's joining us on the show today during her last days with the city of Rocky Mount. So hello, Vanessa.
Hello.
We know you're leaving in a few days to go to Tampa, Florida. Yeah, Housing and Community Development Manager, right?
Yes.
So Vanessa was my suite mate. So I'm particularly gonna miss you, you know? So, but before we get into what you've done for the city and all that good stuff, tell me a little bit about yourself for folks who are getting to know you during the show today.
Okay. I am married to Anthony McCleary, Tony, and I have 3 sons, Stuart, Jason, and AJ, and dog Max. Can't forget Max. I came here, I grew up in Rochester, New York, lived in Delaware, and then came to Rocky Mount. And this is where I have been for the last 15 years. I'm a member of the Rocky Mount Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. I was previously on the board of the Boys and Girls Club. I also was a founding member for Reach Out Rocky Mount. So those are Reach Out Rocky Mount, the Boys and Girls Club, and my sorority are things that I'm very passionate about. So that's why I mention those, because I hope that people support those organizations. I think they do a tremendous job for the community. Like I said, I've been here 15 years. I am a member of Metropolitan Baptist Church. I have a great church. I have a great community. I've had a great life here. And like you said, it's bittersweet to leave.
Where'd you go to school, Vanessa?
I went to Our Lady of Mercy High School, and I got my degree in Human Service from Springfield College.
Okay, so how did you go from New York to Rocky Mount, and how did you land here at the city, working for the city of Rocky Mount?
Like I said, grew up in New York, met Tony, and we got married. He took a job with DuPont, which is what took us to Delaware. We were in Delaware for 5 years, and the company was sold, the branch that he worked in was sold to Sterling, and we were looking for a change. Happened to come through Rocky Mount at Christmas, and my husband's degree is in aerospace and mechanical engineering. And my uncle was working at what was Allied Signal at the time. We come through, it was around Christmas time. My uncle says, come into the plant with me. He goes in and he sees them working on these F-14 planes, and he's got the simulator game, and so he loves that plane. And he's like, Van, do you know what they do there? So he puts in an application, and we were going on a family cruise, and just before the cruise, he got a call for an interview. And he got the job with Allied Signal. He came first, and I was still in Delaware. I was working on a conference. We were going back and forth. Came down. We were at a car wash, and while we were at the car wash, Tony is a Q, and Charles Penny, the city manager, is a Q. Didn't know he was a city manager at the time. He sees a tag, strikes up a conversation. We have a conversation, and this crazy man invites us to his house.
Wow.
So we go back to the hotel. Now, we're New Yorkers, so we're very skeptical about people, and we usually don't talk to people. So we go back to the hotel, and we're like, well, there's nothing to do. What are we going to do? And he says, you think we should call him? And I'm like, well, we don't have anything else. And he's like, well, what if they're crazy people and they, kill us or something? Okay, we'll just go. We go over, we meet Edith, we have a great time with them, we meet some other folks, and she's like, I'll help you look for a house. She goes out with us, helps us find a house, then helps us get the kids into school, because we had Jason and AJ at the time, helps us get the kids into school, and we have just been the best of friends ever since. He also tells me that there's a job, that they're looking for a community development. He asked me what I did in Delaware, and I told him I was a housing counseling director, so I was directing an agency that did housing counseling. I worked for the Y, and the Y had a shelter, and we had different programs for women, and one of them was home ownership. So he says, we've got this position you may be interested in. So I apply for the position, I go back to Delaware, I'm working on the conference, they call me for the interview, I interview. They called me to start the day that the conference that I was working on finished, and the rest is history.
Isn't that something? So you were first exposed to Rocky Mount. You found out it was a friendly place.
Yes, a very friendly place.
Exactly. So how long did you work as community development manager here? And what did that job encompass? What did it entail?
In community development, we were administering the federal programs for the city of Rocky Mount. So we had CDBG, home, we acquired a lead grant, we had a number of different grants, some through the state as well. And so we were working with the community to help rebuild the housing stock, to help elderly people to stay in their home. We also assisted nonprofits. I think one of the first grants that I helped write was for United Community Ministries when I first got here. They had applied a couple of times, hadn't gotten it. We're using a consultant, and it was myself and Peggy Kennedy worked on the grant, and we put it in, and they were able to get that grant. Redid the housing program, the housing rehab program, put some additional standards in, worked with the Down East Home Consortium, which is, I think they're now up to about 14 jurisdictions in the Twin County area on their housing program, helping them to administer that. Worked with the neighborhood groups because we were having trouble getting the word out about the different programs. So we created a neighborhood leaders council. Through that, we were able to get the neighborhood groups working with each other, but also working better with the city, informing them about how different departments worked and where to get information about things that were going on, the concerns they had in their neighborhoods. We told the neighborhood folks, get it to your neighborhood leader, who will then get it to, let them be the liaison with the city so we can get those issues addressed. That group, I was just talking with someone about, we had a neighborhood leaders conference because I got them into a statewide association of neighborhood leaders, and we had a conference here a few years back. But it was a really good group, and it was a good conference that just gave a lot of good information to folks and help leaders to understand how they can affect change in their community, that it's not all about the city doing it, but there are things that they as neighborhood leaders can do and neighborhoods can do to make their neighborhoods better. Just had a lot of different things. And then while I was in community development, that's where the Douglas Block Project actually started.
Okay.
We had gotten a grant through the Humanities Council to do an oral history, and we did the oral history of the Douglas Block. So we brought in folks that used to have businesses down there, people that used to visit the block, and we put together this oral history. From that oral history, we then developed the master plan, the Douglas Block master plan, had a consultant come in, had folks come in and just tell us what they wanted that block to be. It was the African American economic hub at one time, and it had fallen into disrepair. And it was building owners that were saying, you know, I can't afford to fix this, come help us, you know, we want to see this come back. It was a critical piece of the community, and we want to see it rebuilt. We don't want to have it just demolished. So the plan gave us a footprint for how to do that. We then started applying for grants. So we secured a Section 108, then we secured a Betty grant. The Betty grant, the time that we got it, they only did 10 in the country. So I was very proud that our application was approved. Not the first time, but the second time. And
so what is a Betty grant?
That is a Brownfield Economic Development Initiative grant. So we got the Betty grant, we got some funding through EPA, we got some funding through some state organizations, we had some new market tax credits, historic tax credits, bundle all that together so that we could then rehab the 6 buildings that you see down there now. And seeing that project from, you know, the oral history where I became passionate about what was happening in that block, just listening to and being inspired by the stories of the folks that used to have businesses down there, to, you know, having it turned over to the then downtown development manager, which was Ian Kipp. And he got to work on it, and I was like, my baby's leaving me. And so when he left, I saw that as like, oh, he's leaving, I can go back. So I took that job, and that job is actually a grade lower than the job that I was in. But I wanted to do it because I saw it as an opportunity to follow a project that I had become very passionate about.
And this is what you're doing now, Downtown Development Manager. So it sounds like to me the transition was just seamless.
Seamless. It really was. And I got to step back into a project that I had kind of started and work on some other projects. So Ian left at a good time because the projects were just getting ready to kick off, like the streetscape, like the Douglas Block. was able to work with Marilyn Wright from Rocky Mount Edgecombe CDC and Joyce Dickens to get tenants in. So we did a project that it closed. We did the initial CO in December of 2011. By 2012, we had it 85% rented up, which is, you know, unheard of, especially during that time, because we were going through some hard times economically throughout the country, and you really didn't have small businesses starting. And for the ones that are down there, I am especially excited that they are doing so well, that, you know, Cool Geeks, which does the computer repair, has to outsource the work because he has so much, that the bath place is doing so well that she has a hard time keeping stock on the shelves, that Brinkley Appliances, who doesn't even have full-time hours, is still making more than enough to pay the rent and to be successful. It's like, if you can do that with part-time hours, imagine what you're going to do with full-time hours. That Dr. Romney's pediatric care service is, you know, she needed so many clients a day to make it really work, and she's got more than that, even thinking about bringing on additional staff. That the law practice is doing well. Lawrence and Best, that Designs by Felicia is doing well. She's got a hairdressing practice in the back of her shop, and that's what she started out as, and then started doing gift baskets and things, and now she's doing more of the gift baskets than she is the hairdressing. That Vonda Cruz and Shop is doing well, selling antiques and more in her shop. You know, so it's just really great to see that success. And it's especially great to see that the economic mix that the block used to have has been restored. So they used to have a doctor, now there's a doctor. They used to have attorneys in the block, now there's attorneys in the block. And we're even talking to a dentist that will put a dental practice back in the block. Brinkley Appliances, she used to work at Weaver Appliances, which used to be in the block. That there was hairdressing in the block, and it's back. So, you know, that economic mix is back. And then, you know, the crowning jewel was a Prime Smokehouse, getting them to come. I've had a great time in Rocky Mount. I've had a lot of great successes, and I feel like I'm leaving it better than when I got here. But I know, you know, it's just an awesome city, and so there's great things to come.
And you are leaving it a lot better. You've made some big accomplishments, and we can tell that by all the things that you've talked about so far. But would you be able to pinpoint one big accomplishment? What is your biggest?
I think the Douglas block, because it shows, you know, when you look at, we're part of the Main Street, and Main Street has this four-point approach, and that block encompasses that four-point approach. You know, it talks about organization, design, economic restructuring. You know, it's all there in that project. Looking at how Main Street has changed, how we've been able to get some of these buildings, not all of them, I mean, there's still a long way to go, but just getting new stores in, getting people to think about downtown in a different way, going down there and seeing more cars, having trouble parking sometimes. That's been a huge accomplishment. In community development, I think the one that touches me the most, and some people may not think it was a big accomplishment, but getting the neighborhood groups working together and putting together that neighborhood council. I made a lot of great friends there that, you know, they still come by and see me, and they still care about me, and if I get sick, you know, it's always interesting. You get sick and somebody finds out about it, and next thing you're getting soup at your door from, you know, someone from the neighborhood, or they're doing something for your kids, or so that one means a lot to me too.
Okay. And speaking of neighborhood council, let's talk about some of the other organizations you've been involved with, like CCRP. Tell me about those and what that involvement entails.
The CCRP, which is the Central City Revitalization Panel, that is the group that helps us to put together the plans and the work plans for what happens in downtown. So that's the group that's been helping me to figure out, okay, what do we need to do to turn it around? My counterparts in other downtowns are doing more events. our downtown, because of the nature of the buildings, we have to do more in terms of demolition by neglect and historic preservation and getting the roofs fixed on the buildings, getting the property owners to do more with their buildings, to market their buildings, helping them with those type of things is a little different in terms of the focus and the amount of energy that you put into those type of things, and even structuring deals. I do a lot with helping folks to do business plans or write business plans or find financing, you know, sell their property, show their property, those type of things. So the CCRP helps with that. You've got Downtown Renaissance, which is another group that has been around for a long time that looks at buildings. So they purchased 100 Northwest Main to salvage that building, put a new roof on it. They purchased 152, 154, where Dr. Brown's office is now. And they put in the Palladium window that used to be bricked up. They fixed the facade, they fixed the roof, and we were able to market that building and get someone in. So they're looking at, okay, how can we get these pivotal buildings and make something happen with them? They were also very critical when we redid the Imperial Center, because it was through them that we were able to get the tax credits for that project.
So the funding comes out of their pockets?
Didn't come out of their pockets.
Okay.
Because the city is already a nonprofit, we weren't able to take advantage of the tax credits, and we used new market and historic tax credits for the Imperial Center, also for the Douglas block. With the Imperial Center, we work with Downtown Renaissance to pull that financing together. With the Douglas block, we work with Rocky Mount Edgecombe CDC to pull the financing together. So there are some monies that we may have wrote the grant application, but we needed a partner to help us really make things happen, to help us in terms of finding different resources that we could use and making those applications. So you have Downtown Renaissance, the CCRP. I've got a Downtown Pastors Group, which is the downtown churches. So getting information out is hard. And in downtown, you have a lot of the larger churches. So working with the pastors and telling them what was going on and how things were going and what new businesses were coming, they were able to help us promote that information to their congregations. Marty Cawley, who is on the CCRP, came to those meetings, and from the information that we were sharing, that's how we were able to get Milton and Miles. In his congregation, he was able to connect parishioners who, one had the idea, another one could help with financing and building that business plan to say, yes, you can do this. And it was the church rallying around Brian that helped him to start Milton and Miles. I mean, it was something that he needed that extra push, and through the downtown pastors and Marty Cawley, they were able to do that. And now we have Milton and Miles in the Imperial Center, which is a great restaurant and doing well.
And I know you mentioned earlier that other cities focus more so on events, but we've done a lot with events too since you've come to downtown. Tell me about some of those that have kind of started under your helm.
The one that really started, because Downtown Live, we had Downtown Live before. We've enhanced it, but I have to give the credit to that to Kelvin and Maureen and Parks and Recreation staff. Our Parks and Recreation staff is awesome. I mean, the things that they do and the events that they put together, I just think that they're bar none, and they do such a wonderful job, and they work really hard, and just want to give them the credit for that. But the Rocking Auto Classic was something that I wanted to do because we were working on the streetscape, and I said, you know, I really need something that's going to show off these new streets and sidewalks, and what better way than it was looking at old pictures of antique cars. They weren't antique at the time that the pictures were taken, but looking at those cars on the street and saying, you know, we need to do something like that. So we've had the Auto Classic now. We've had about 3 of them. And every year it's gotten bigger and better. And it is just such an awesome sight to see those, you know, beautiful cars along the street and people walking up and down the sidewalks and walking up and down the street and looking at those cars, but also getting them into downtown to see change is happening. And this is a place worth saving. And it's a place where really downtown is where communities get together and they gather. You know, who really gathers in the mall? Who really gathers in the suburbs? Downtown is where you do that. When you look at thriving cities, It's because they have a vibrant downtown. They have a vibrant place where people can go to restaurants and to concerts and cultural events. That usually happens in your downtown. And in Rocky Mount, we've had this trend of young people leaving the area because they don't feel like there's anything to do. And we're trying to reverse that by making the downtown more vibrant. We're even working on some projects to bring student housing because young people like living in close proximity, you know, where they can just be hanging out in the evening, sitting on the bench, playing some music, just getting together in these, not clubs or bars or anything like that, but just out in the street in the neighborhood where they live. So that's something that we're trying to bring back in the downtown, and we've started taking some steps towards it, and you're starting to see it more.
You absolutely are, because downtown live, you see young folks. At this year's Rockin' Classic Auto and Motorcycle Expo, I think that was the biggest crowd that we've had.
Yeah.
And it was all ages, so that was good too. Vanessa, I really don't know who is going to be able to fill your shoes, because you've done a lot. What would be your words of advice to the next person, though?
To the next person, they really need to have energy and passion and drive, because you really have to push. And you know, you're working on downtown, but you got a lot of folks saying it's not going to happen and why are you bothering? And you have to be able to push past that, and you have to be able to push people to do things that they're not comfortable with, getting them to step outside their comfort zone, getting them to embrace your vision. You know, I think my passion has been infectious for some, not everyone, but infectious for some in terms of we can do this and we can make it happen. And it's going to take time. Downtown didn't fall into disrepair overnight, so it's going to take time. But just because we have a minor setback doesn't mean that's the end. Just because you run into a roadblock doesn't mean that's the end. You have to be able to hit those roadblocks and say, okay, maybe I can't get this way, but I can get this way, or I can get this way. There's got to be another way around this roadblock so I can move this community forward. So I think passion, commitment, vision, dedication, being able to do whatever it takes. If it means working with the different departments and getting in there and pushing people and making them uncomfortable, if that's what's going to make downtown better, which makes this community better, that's what you got to do.
What do you want people to say about you once you've moved on?
I was passionate.
Yeah, and you are.
I mean, I want them to understand that, you know, sometimes I may have stepped on somebody's toes or done something that, you know, maybe you didn't like, but it was, my heart has always been about this community. I came to Rocky Mount and I fell in love with Rocky Mount, and it was my home. And when people talk bad about it, I wasn't having it, because Rocky Mount was like my kids. Don't talk bad about my kids, don't talk bad about my community. It has its faults, but it's mine. I live here, and so this is the best place on earth.
Well, thank you so much, Vanessa. Thanks for all that you've done for the city. And I wish you much luck. I really do. I hate that you're going to leave us, but I wish you well.
Thank you.
So good luck in Tampa, okay? And I know you're going to do a tremendous job. Really.
I hope so.
Yeah, you will. So thank you as well. If you see Vanessa the next few days, tell her congratulations. We wish her luck on her journey to Tampa, Florida. I'm Tamika Keenan Norman. We'll see you again next week for another edition of City Beat.